Super long, interesting conversation on Reddit today, Ask Car Sales, where how to buy a car with bad credit. And the initial question posed was from a guy. I guess his girlfriend had financed something that should have been, let's say just for simplicity's purposes, $15,000 financed, and she was ultimately going to be paying almost $35,000 on the loan because of interest. And she had something in the mid 20s in terms of her financing APR, which, if you're not familiar with financing, that's a very high interest rate, right? And the more responsible you are with credit, the less you pay for credit. The less responsible you are, the more you pay. That's comprised of the data points of your credit score. So if you have Credit Karma, all of those credit monitoring systems, I have different videos on that. But he asked, oh my gosh, is she really going to pay this huge amount on this small amount? And I chimed into the conversation because really there are three scenarios that play out when it comes to a loan that size. And the punchline is no. It's very unlikely that she's going to pay the full amount. The first scenario that I kind of posed is that if she was financed as a first-time buyer, that just meant that she had no credit history, no payment history, that there were no data points for the bank to make their decision upon. So she was high risk, so clearly high risk because they had nothing to inform how much to lend her and whether or not she was going to be responsible in her payments. And then if she proved herself to be a consistent and reliable payer, she'd be eligible to refinance in a good chunk of time. So no, she'd be paying a lower interest rate potentially, assuming that those were available to her and through her more reliable payment history. Hypothetical scenario 2 is going to be no, she's not going to pay it because unfortunately her credit bureau has historically indicated that she doesn't pay anything, and it will most likely result in a default or a repossession of some kind where they have to take back the vehicle because she did not pay as planned. The third scenario, of course, though, and this happens a lot as well, is if she busts booty and really put her head down and committed to paying off that loan as quickly as she could and throw as much money at that additional principal to pay down the balance, she would be paying less interest overall as well by making a reduction in the initial amount financed, so the principal reduction, right? And so across those three scenarios, that's your most likely outcome. And then I kind of made the point as well that number 1 plus number 3, those combined is the most ideal pathway forward when you have to take on a high interest loan like this to get into the vehicle that you're looking for. And so I've had people now, I've been in this long enough, that were in that subprime with the first car that I sold them. And then when they came back to see me again, they were in tier 1 top tier credit. And my encouragement is if you are in this situation, there's plenty of opportunity for you to turn things around, and there's plenty of opportunity to get out of that situation if you are committed to moving forward, to getting your financial house in order, and to taking the steps necessary to kind of do what you need to do. There's another piece to this. If you're thinking about purchasing a vehicle with bad credit, you need to go into it with a certain mentality that you're looking for what we call a solutions car. And so unfortunately, if you're in a credit challenge situation, you need to kind of scale back expectations and look really for reliability. Because the follow-on question that continued the conversation was, given the depreciation of vehicles and how they lose value over time, because a car is of course a depreciating asset, does anybody ever get out of this cycle? And yes, if you get yourself like a reliable Japanese manufacturer car, like a Toyota, a Honda, a Mazda, or even the later model on kind of a Lexus or an Acura that have long proven history of reliability and a well-known track record for a lower cost of ownership for the long haul, yes, they will last the life of the loan and then some, especially if you shorten the amount of time that you're paying off the vehicle by making those extra payments. And so if you commit to doing that, and if you pay attention and make sure you're doing your regularly scheduled maintenance no matter what, because that's something that can tank and sink people as well, is they let something go a little bit too long. And by not taking care of the asset and not prioritizing maintaining it, that kind of crossover gets tighter and tighter and tighter, right? Then you can, again, not be purchasing your next vehicle from a place of being credit challenged. The other part of that as well is something that can sink those individuals is if they total the vehicle without gap insurance and then have to try and roll whatever was left over of the loan. If you're not familiar with gap insurance, I have another video on it. But when they try to roll whatever's left, there's a ton of negative equity and nowhere for it to go. Trying to get financed and bought and into something new is going to be extraordinarily challenging. On that solutions car, on that totaling, you have to be mindful with what you're getting. If you're intentional about your decisions, if you create something where you're consistent and really committed to making your circumstances better, I promise it's totally possible. So if you're credit challenged, it's a good starting point. Find that solutions car. Good luck and happy shopping.